A silent blueprint connects the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of Mexico. Across continents and millennia, ancient builders left behind a code in stone, and we are about to crack it open. By the end of this journey, you will see a hidden pattern linking 30 of the world's most mysterious sites, revealing a forgotten chapter in human history. How could cultures that never met design monuments with the same precise mathematics and celestial alignments? What common knowledge did they all possess? When you look at these grand ruins, what story of our shared past do you think they are trying to tell? The key to unlocking this mystery is not found in matching architectural styles. A Mayan temple does not look like an Egyptian pyramid, and a stone circle in Britain bears little resemblance to a fortress in Peru. The connection is far more profound, hidden in the very bones of these structures. We are searching for a shared construction logic, a set of universal principles that guided builders from opposite ends of the earth. This logic transcends decoration and enters the realm of advanced engineering and cosmic understanding. First, consider orientation. Time and again, these ancient masterpieces are aligned with breathtaking precision to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. This is not a rough approximation, but an alignment accurate to within a fraction of a degree. It suggests the builders possessed not just a compass, but a sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and geodesy, the science of measuring the earth itself. Then examine the masonry, look at the stonework in countless that valued durability, harmony, and a deep connection to the cosmos above all else. This is the blueprint we are now going to trace across the globe, starting with its most iconic expression. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with an error of just 1/15 of a degree. This is not a lucky guess. It is an engineering declaration, a statement of intent carved into the bedrock of history. This obsession with pinpoint cardinal alignment is our first universal clue, a signature found from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Cambodia and the plains of Pakistan. At Mohenjo-Daro, one of the world's earliest major cities, the entire urban grid was laid out along a precise north-south and east-west axis. Every street, every major building, conformed to this rigid geometric order over 4,000 years ago. The question becomes unavoidable. How did these separated cultures, some flourishing millennia apart, all manage to find true north with such astonishing accuracy long before the magnetic compass was invented? The answer likely lies in looking up, not down. One prevailing theory points to the circumpolar stars, those celestial sentinels that never set below the horizon. By observing the rotation of the stars around the north celestial pole, particularly by marking the midpoint between the rising and setting positions of a single star, ancient astronomers could determine north with incredible precision. This method requires patience, meticulous record-keeping over generations, and a deep, reverent study of the night sky. It was a sacred science where architecture began not with a surveyor's stake, but with a priest's observation of the heavens. Yet, some researchers propose even more sophisticated knowledge. Could certain cultures have understood concepts of geodesy, the measurement of the Earth itself? Alignments so perfect they account for the planet's slight curvature suggest a grasp of global geography that traditional history struggles to explain. Other, more speculative ideas discuss an awareness of Earth's subtle magnetic fields or telluric currents, sometimes called ley lines, though these remain firmly in the realm of alternative theory. What is undeniable is the result. This foundational act of alignment was far more than a technical first step. It was a ritual. By anchoring their greatest creations to the immutable directions of the cosmos, the builders were doing something profound. They were transforming a patch of Earth into a cosmic mirror, a permanent reflection of celestial order here on the ground. This precise orientation served as the stable platform upon which every other layer of sacred geometry and astronomical function would be built. It was the cornerstone of their entire architectural logic, and it begs a deeper question about the source of this universal, skyward gaze. That single, perfect alignment to true north is only the beginning of the Great Pyramid's silent testimony. This structure is a library written in stone, its dimensions whispering advanced mathematics across 46 centuries. Take its base perimeter. If you take the distance around its four sides and divide it by twice the pyramid's original height, the result is a number startlingly close to pi, the fundamental constant that defines a circle. This is not a vague suggestion, it is a precise geometric encoding. The builders intentionally designed a square monument to embody a circle's most important ratio, a profound fusion of shapes that speaks to a deep, symbolic understanding of the universe's geometry. Then there is the stone itself. The Great Pyramid was originally sheathed in brilliant white Tura limestone casing stones, polished to a mirror finish. These blocks, some weighing 15 tons, were cut and fitted with a precision that defies simple explanation. The joints between them were so exact that the gaps measured about half a millimeter, thinner than a credit card. This was not merely for beauty, it was an exercise in flawless engineering, creating a seamless, monolithic surface that reflected the sun like a beacon. This mastery extends to the interior, where granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons were hauled into chambers deep within the structure, fitted with equal exactness. The logistical genius required to quarry, transport, dress, and position millions of such stones with pre-industrial technology remains one of history's greatest puzzles. But the pyramid's message is not just in its form or its fit, it is in its function as a celestial instrument. The descending and ascending passageways are aligned with specific stars, like the pole star of its era, Alpha Draconis, and the bright star Sirius, sacred to the goddess Isis. The entire monument can be seen as a frozen observatory, its angles capturing and commemorating specific moments in the cosmic cycle. So we must ask, what does this represent? The Great Pyramid stands as our archetypal benchmark, the fullest expression we have of this ancient construction logic. It combines precise cardinal alignment, megalithic polygonal masonry, encoded sacred geometry, and direct astronomical alignment into one perfect package. This presents us with a critical fork in the road of understanding. Was this immense, integrated knowledge developed solely within the Nile Valley, a unique flowering of Egyptian genius, or does the pyramid's perfection suggest something else, that it is not the origin point, but perhaps the most complete surviving example of a much older, far more widely shared tradition? To answer that, we cannot stay in Egypt. We must follow the blueprint elsewhere and see if the same fingerprints appear in stone. Across the Atlantic Ocean and over 2,000 years later, the same silent blueprint resurfaces in the highlands of Mexico. Teotihuacan, the immense city where gods were born, rises from the valley floor not as a haphazard collection of temples, but as a meticulously planned cosmic diagram. Here, the logic shifts from a single, towering monument to an entire sacred metropolis, yet the underlying principles remain unmistakably familiar. The city's colossal heart is the Pyramid of the Sun. While its stepped profile differs from the smooth slopes of Giza, its mathematical message is eerily similar. The perimeter of its base measures approximately 895 meters. Convert that to the ancient Egyptian unit of measurement, the royal cubit, and the figure aligns almost perfectly with the perimeter of the Great Pyramid. This is not a vague resemblance, it is a precise numerical echo across an ocean and a millennium. It is as if two different architects, working from the same master plan, chose to express the same fundamental dimension in two distinct architectural languages. This shared geometry extends into the very layout of the city. Teotihuacan is organized along a central spine known as the Avenue of the Dead, a vast processional way flanked by platforms and smaller pyramids. This avenue, however, is not aligned to the cardinal directions. Instead, it deviates 15.5 degrees east of true north. For decades, this was considered an oddity, perhaps a topographical compromise. Then researchers looked to the sky. They discovered this specific alignment points directly to the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster on the horizon, a celestial event of profound importance in Mesoamerican cosmology. The Pleiades, often called the Seven Sisters, marked key agricultural cycles and were deeply woven into creation myths. The entire city, therefore, was oriented not just to the static north, but to a dynamic, recurring celestial event. This represents a sophisticated evolution of the alignment principle, from marking a fixed direction to capturing a moment in time, year after year. Further evidence of this cosmic choreography is found at the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, also known as the Feathered Serpent Pyramid. Its facade is adorned with staggering stone carvings of the plumed serpent deity, but its true genius is in its alignment. During the spring equinox, the interplay of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the side of the pyramid, a breathtaking display of architectural astronomy that connects earth and sky in a visible, moving spectacle. This practice of light and shadow hierophanies, where architecture becomes a stage for celestial drama, is another hallmark of the global pattern. Teotihuacan, therefore, gives us the blueprint in urban scale. It shows us that this ancient knowledge was not solely for tombs or solitary temples, but could be used to design entire cities as functional observatories and sacred landscapes. The builders of this American metropolis clearly operated under the same core directives: precise measurement, astronomical alignment, and the encoding of sacred relationships into stone. Their work forces a compelling question. If this was a locally developed idea in Mexico, how does it so perfectly mirror the technical and philosophical goals of a civilization an ocean away that flourished centuries earlier? The pattern insists we keep looking. Machu Picchu does not conquer its mountain, it converses with it. Perched on a narrow ridge between soaring Andean peaks, this citadel represents perhaps the most eloquent adaptation of our shared construction logic to an extreme and demanding environment. Here, the ancient principles of precise alignment and unshakable masonry were not applied to a flat desert or a planned grid, but were forced to negotiate with sheer cliffs, rushing water, and the constant threat of earthquakes. The result is a masterpiece of integration where the built world and the natural world become one seamless entity. The stonework is the first and most obvious testament to this genius. The builders employed a technique known as ashlar masonry, where granite blocks are painstakingly cut into complex polygonal shapes that interlock like a three-dimensional puzzle. No mortar was used, yet the joints are so exact that even after centuries you cannot insert a blade between the stones. This was not merely for aesthetic perfection, it was a brilliant seismic innovation. When the ground trembles, these walls are designed to dance. The individual stones, locked together by their own weight and intricate shapes, can shift and settle during an earthquake before clicking back into place, a system modern engineers call dynamic masonry. The walls themselves often lean slightly inward, a subtle batter that increases stability, and their foundations are stepped and terraced to follow the contoured bedrock, anchoring the entire city directly to the bones of the mountain. This profound respect for the terrain extends to the spiritual and celestial dimensions of the site. At its highest point sits the Intihuatana stone, a carved granite pillar whose name is often translated as the hitching post of the sun. This was no simple altar, it was a sophisticated astronomical instrument. Its precisely angled planes and corners are aligned to capture the sun's rays during the solstices and equinoxes, casting distinct shadows that mark the passage of the seasons with ritual accuracy. It functioned as a calendar and a clock, tethering the sacred cycles of time to this immovable stone in the sky. What Machu Picchu demonstrates so powerfully is the flexibility of the ancient blueprint. The same core imperatives seen in Egypt and Mexico, celestial alignment, earthquake-resistant polygonal masonry, and sacred geometry, were not rigidly copied. They were intelligently adapted. In the Andes, the logic manifested as a profound dialogue with topography. The builders did not level the ridge, they learned its language. They channeled water through meticulously crafted stone conduits. They shaped terraces to hold soil and prevent erosion, and they oriented temples and windows to frame specific mountain peaks, which were themselves considered sacred deities or apus. This site shows us that the shared knowledge was not a cookie-cutter template, but a sophisticated toolkit of principles. It was a deep understanding of how to build in harmony with immense natural forces, whether those forces were the predictable path of the stars or the unpredictable tremors of the earth. At Machu Picchu, the mountain is not a backdrop, it is the other architect in the partnership. Stonehenge stands not as a random ring of rocks, but as a colossal stone computer left on the windswept Salisbury plain. Here, the ancient logic manifests not in pyramids or terraced cities, but in a stark, open-air observatory built from sarsen stones weighing up to 50 tons each. Its purpose seems breathtakingly clear: to track the cycles of the sun and moon with a precision that governed the rhythms of an entire culture. The central alignment is its most famous feature. If you stand at the heart of the circle on the summer solstice, you will see the sun rise directly over the heel stone, a massive sentinel placed outside the main ring. This alignment is not approximate, it is deliberate and dramatic, marking the longest day of the year with a beam of light that penetrates to the very center of the sanctuary. A corresponding alignment marks the winter solstice sunset, framing the year within these two pivotal celestial moments. This makes Stonehenge a solar calendar carved from granite, a permanent guarantee that the community would never lose track of the seasons essential for planting and harvest. Yet the sophistication runs far deeper than these two alignments. Archaeological study reveals Stonehenge was built in multiple phases over more than 1,000 years. It began with a simple circular ditch and bank, then evolved through timber structures, and finally culminated in the towering stone trilithons we see today. This long evolution is critical. It shows a sustained, generational project of refinement. The builders were not following a static plan, but actively experimenting and improving their astronomical model. They were learning, decade after decade, how to better capture the complex dance of the heavens. This progressive understanding is etched into the stonework itself. Look at the iconic trilithons, the three stone structures of two uprights and a lintel. To secure the massive lintels in place, the builders employed a technique straight from the carpenter's workshop. They carved convex tenons or rounded knobs on top of the upright stones. Then they carved matching concave mortises or sockets into the bottom of each lintel. This tongue and groove system locked the lintels securely onto the uprights, making the entire structure immensely stable. This is a profound clue. It represents the transfer of advanced knowledge from one material to another. The builders had mastered complex joinery in wood, and they applied that same intricate understanding to stone, a material 100 times heavier and more difficult to shape. They were not mere stone haulers, they were engineers who thought in 3 dimensions, solving problems of weight, balance, and permanence. The entire monument, therefore, becomes a statement of purpose. It was designed for durability not for a lifetime, but for millennia. It was built to withstand the gales and rains of the English plain so that its astronomical alignments would remain true forever. Stonehenge gives us the blueprint in its most elemental form, a circle of aligned megaliths serving as a communal lens focused on the cosmos. It proves this shared knowledge was not confined to warm climates or centralized empires, but could flourish on the remote edges of the ancient world, all in service of answering humanity's oldest question: where do we stand in the great turning of the sky? Angkor Wat is a universe captured in stone and water. In the humid jungles of Cambodia, the ancient blueprint we have been tracing undergoes another remarkable transformation, adapting to a landscape defined not by desert or mountain, but by the relentless, life-giving monsoon. Here, the shared construction logic expresses itself through hydraulic cosmology, where vast reservoirs and intricate moats are as sacred as the temple towers themselves. The central concept is the Temple Mountain, a man-made peak designed to represent Mount Meru, the mythical axis of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist belief. The 5 iconic towers of Angkor Wat rise like stone lotus buds, a direct architectural metaphor for the 5 peaks of the sacred mountain. But this symbolic mountain does not stand alone. It is surrounded by a massive moat, over 200 meters wide, representing the cosmic ocean that encircles the world. This is where the genius of the builders becomes breathtakingly clear. They did not just carve a symbol, they engineered an entire hydraulic landscape to sustain it. Beyond the moat lies an even more ambitious system, a network of colossal reservoirs called barrays. These were not simple ponds, they were vast, geometrically precise artificial lakes, some measuring 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. Their purpose was dual, practical and profoundly spiritual. Practically, they mastered water in a land of extremes, storing monsoon rains to irrigate rice paddies during the dry season, supporting a metropolis of nearly 1 million people. Spiritually, they extended the symbolism of the cosmic ocean, turning the entire city of Angkor into a microcosm of the ordered universe, with water as its defining element. This fusion of supreme engineering and sacred symbolism is the hallmark of the site. Then there is the alignment, a detail that has puzzled scholars for generations. Unlike most Hindu temples which face the rising sun in the east, the main entrance of Angkor Wat faces precisely west. This was long considered an anomaly, perhaps linked to its function as a funerary temple for a king. But researchers looking through the lens of archaeoastronomy noticed something extraordinary. On the morning of the spring equinox, if you stand at the western gateway looking back along the central causeway toward the main temple, the sun rises directly over the central tower. In that moment, the architecture frames the sun crowning the symbolic Mount Meru, a celestial event that marries astronomy to spiritual rebirth. This deliberate Western orientation was not a mistake. It was a sophisticated choice to capture a specific, meaningful alignment, weaving the solar cycle directly into the temple's ritual function. Angkor Wat, therefore, expands our understanding of the ancient logic. It shows us that the principles of precise alignment and sacred geometry could be seamlessly integrated with large-scale civil engineering. The builders possessed a holistic vision where water management, urban planning, religious doctrine, and astronomical observation were all parts of a single grand design. They saw no separation between the practical need to control floods and the spiritual need to mirror the cosmos. In the jungles of Cambodia, the silent blueprint speaks the language of water, proving that this shared knowledge was an adaptable philosophy for building civilizations in harmony with the very forces that sustain them. The silent blueprint found its way to the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a speck of volcanic rock in the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Here, separated from all other cultures by an impossible expanse of water, the ancient drive to shape enduring monuments from living rock reached a breathtaking, almost desperate crescendo in the form of the moai. These colossal stone figures, with their solemn, elongated faces and heavy brows, stand as sentinels along the coastline, a stark testament to a human will that refused to be limited by geography. Their existence poses a profound challenge to our narrative. If this construction logic was a shared knowledge passed between cultures, how did it arrive here, in this ultimate isolation? The answer may be that the logic is not a set of instructions, but a fundamental human impulse, a set of solutions that different cultures discover when faced with the same monumental ambition. The quarry at Rano-Raraku is the birthplace of this mystery, a volcanic crater turned open-air workshop frozen in time. Walking its slopes is like stepping into a factory the workers just left. Dozens of moai in various stages of completion are still embedded in the bedrock, lying at angles as if caught in the act of being born from the mountain. Some are mere outlines while others are nearly finished, their detailed backs still attached to the rock by a thin stone spine. This scene offers the clearest clues to their construction method. The statues were not fully carved and then moved. They were shaped in situ, with the master sculptors carving the front, sides, and detailed features while the giant block was still part of the mountain. Only the back was left attached until the very end. This was a brilliant strategy. It provided stability during the delicate carving process and may have served as a pivot point for lowering the finished statue onto a prepared transport system. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The average moai stands about 4 meters tall and weighs around 12 tons, but the largest one, left unfinished in the quarry, is over 21 meters long and estimated to weigh a staggering 270 tons. The ambition here was not just to carve statues, but to move mountains. This leads to the island's most famous puzzle, transport. How did a society with no metal, no wheels, and no large animals move these multi-ton giants across miles of rugged terrain to their coastal platforms? The traditional theory, popularized by experiments, involves a rocking, walking motion. By using ropes to tilt the statue from side to side and pivot it forward, small teams could, in theory, walk a moai upright across the landscape. This method aligns with oral traditions that say the statues walked to their places with divine mana, or spiritual power. More recent research suggests they may have been laid prone and moved on a sled or log rollers along prepared roads. Both theories speak to an immense communal effort, a society wholly dedicated to a singular artistic and spiritual vision. The goal was to get the moai to their ahu, the ceremonial stone platforms that line the coast. While the precise astronomical alignments of the moai are less defined than at Stonehenge or Angkor Wat, their placement is deeply intentional. Nearly all ahu platforms are positioned parallel to the shoreline, and the moai erected upon them face inland, their backs to the sea. They do not gaze outward at the horizon, but inward, watching over the villages and the people. This suggests their primary function was ancestral. They were not navigational aids for sailors, but stone embodiments of powerful lineage chiefs or important forebears, their watchful eyes claiming and protecting the territory of the clan that built them. The largest ahu, Tongariki, has 15 restored moai standing shoulder to shoulder, a stone choir of ancestors facing the community. This transforms the entire coastline into a sacred genealogy written in basalt. Easter Island, therefore, presents the ancient logic in its most elemental and focused form. It strips away the complex urban grids, the intricate water systems, and the encoded mathematics, reducing the drive to its core components, the extraction and shaping of monolithic stone, the ingenious logistics of moving it, and the spiritual imperative to place it permanently in the landscape. The moai prove that the desire to create something eternal from the earth is a universal human thread. In extreme isolation, a culture developed its own brilliant solution to the same monumental challenge faced by builders across the globe. Their work whispers that this shared logic may be less a transmitted blueprint and more a deep, innate part of who we are, emerging whenever people look at a mountain and see not just rock, but possibility, memory, and a legacy meant to outlast the stars themselves. The drive to build a stairway to heaven is perhaps humanity's oldest architectural dream. In the fertile floodplain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the ancient Sumerians gave this dream its most iconic form, the ziggurat. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, rising from the Mesopotamian dust over 4,000 years ago, was not a tomb for a king, but a bridge for a god. Dedicated to Nana, the deity of the moon, its purpose was singular, to create a literal point of contact between the earthly city and the celestial realm. This structure, a massive stepped pyramid of mud brick faced with baked brick, represents another powerful iteration of the global logic we are tracing, one focused entirely on ritual elevation and cosmic alignment. Unlike the solid, inward-focused pyramids of Giza, the ziggurat was designed to be climbed. Its 3 colossal tiers, connected by a grand central staircase, were a processional highway for priests. They would ascend through the levels, symbolically leaving the mundane world behind, drawing closer to the divine with every step. At the summit stood a small, sacred shrine, the dwelling place of the god, where rituals were performed under the open sky. This vertical journey was a profound architectural metaphor, turning spiritual aspiration into a physical climb, making the connection between heaven and earth tangible, step by step. The construction itself, while using the local material of sun-dried mud brick instead of stone, adhered to the same principles of precision and permanence. The core was a solid mass of brick, providing immense stability, while the exterior was sheathed in a protective skin of fired bricks set in bitumen, a naturally occurring tar. This careful layering was a technological solution to the environment, designed to shield the vulnerable mud brick from the eroding forces of wind and rare rain. Even in its choice of materials, the ziggurat speaks to that universal directive, build to last for eternity. But where does astronomy enter this temple of ascent? The alignment provides the key. The corners of the ziggurat's base are oriented to the cardinal directions, a foundational act of cosmic ordering shared with sites across the world. More specifically, as a temple to the moon god, its entire existence was an act of celestial homage. The lunar cycle, governing Sumerian calendars and agricultural rhythms, was literally worshipped from this elevated platform. While the precise astronomical sightlines may be harder to trace than at Stonehenge, the ziggurat's function as an observatory is embedded in its dedication. Priests atop that high sanctuary would have tracked the phases of the moon, its waxing and waning a divine drama played out directly above their heads. The ziggurat, therefore, crystallizes a theme we have seen from Mexico to Cambodia, the desire to elevate ritual into the astronomical sphere. It was not enough to worship the moon from the ground, one had to climb a man-made mountain to meet it. This transforms the shared construction logic from a mere set of engineering principles into a spiritual technology. The precise orientation, the monumental stable base, the encoded sacred geometry, all these elements served a higher purpose, to create a charged location where the veil between worlds was believed to be thin. The ziggurat of Ur shouts that for these ancient builders, architecture was the ultimate act of reaching, a permanent hand stretched from the mud of the earth toward the shimmering mystery of the stars. Göbekli Tepe does not fit on our timeline. This sprawling complex of stone circles in southeastern Turkey was deliberately buried around 10,000 years ago, and in doing so, it was perfectly preserved, waiting to deliver a message that would upend everything we thought we knew about human history. The conventional story tells us that civilization followed a neat sequence. First, humans learned to farm, creating stable agricultural settlements. This surplus of food allowed for specialization, leading to priests, artisans, and rulers. Only then, with this established social hierarchy, did people have the resources and organization to build monumental temples. Göbekli Tepe turns that story completely on its head. Here, the temple came first, The massive stone pillars, some weighing over 20 tons, were erected by hunter-gatherers over 11,000 years ago, millennia before the wheel, before pottery, and before the first domesticated wheat. This single fact is a seismic shift in understanding. It means the ancient drive to build something permanent, to encode meaning in aligned megaliths, is not a product of civilization. It may very well be its cause. The architecture itself is hauntingly familiar within our growing pattern. The site is composed of multiple circular enclosures, each defined by a ring of immense T-shaped limestone pillars. These pillars are not crude monoliths, they are carefully shaped with flat, broad faces and clearly defined shoulders. They are set into sockets carved directly into the bedrock floor, anchoring them to the earth with an intention that speaks of eternity. Many are adorned with breathtaking bas-relief carvings of animals, foxes, snakes, scorpions, birds, and wild boars, a menagerie of the prehistoric world frozen in stone. This is not random decoration, it is a symbolic language, a belief system carved into the very bones of the structure. The logic here is profoundly communal. There is no evidence of a permanent settlement at Göbekli Tepe, no houses, no granaries. Instead, the evidence points to a seasonal gathering place. Different groups of hunter-gatherers, perhaps from across the region, would converge here at specific times. They would then undertake the Herculean labor of quarrying, carving, and erecting these pillars together, before dispersing back into the landscape. This suggests the monument was not built by slaves under a king's whip, but through a shared ritual imperative. The act of building was the glue that bound these disparate bands together, forging a collective identity and a common spiritual purpose. This reframes the entire concept of the shared construction logic. At Göbekli Tepe, we see it in its most primal, foundational form. The precise orientation of the enclosures is again a key feature. While analysis is ongoing, researchers have proposed that the layouts and specific pillars align with significant celestial events, potentially with the rising of stars like Sirius. This would make Göbekli Tepe the oldest known megalithic observatory on the planet, a place where the sky was first formally invited into human ritual architecture. The implications are staggering. It suggests that the deep knowledge of astronomy and geometry we see in later pyramids and temples is not a later invention, but a tradition with roots stretching back into the twilight of the last ice age. Göbekli Tepe is the prehistoric blueprint. It shows us that before cities, before writing, before farms, humanity felt a powerful urge to gather, to carve stone, to align it with the heavens, and to create a sacred space separate from the everyday world. This site whispers that the shared logic we have been tracing, the marriage of megalithic engineering and celestial observation, may be far older than any single civilization. It might be the original spark, the very catalyst that taught us how to build societies in the first place, by first teaching us how to build a common home for our shared awe. The logic of the ancients was not confined to reaching for the sky. It could also be written across the earth itself on a scale so vast it defies ground-level comprehension. On the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines transform the desert floor into a colossal canvas, shifting the architectural paradigm from vertical majesty to breathtaking horizontal design. Here, the shared principles of precise alignment and sacred geometry unfold not in towering stone, but in shallow trenches scraped into the rocky soil, creating a cryptic language meant for a viewer we can only imagine. These geoglyphs depicting a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and perfect geometric spirals and trapezoids were created through a deceptively simple technique. The desert pavement here is covered with dark, oxidized stones. By carefully removing these surface rocks along predetermined lines, the builders exposed the lighter, sandy soil beneath, creating a stark contrast that has endured for over 2,000 years. The simplicity of the method belies the staggering complexity of the planning. A single figure can stretch over 200 meters, its proportions perfectly maintained across undulating terrain. This required a form of panoramic planning that feels almost modern in its ambition. The artists could not see their own work, at least not in its entirety. They were executing a grand design from within it, like a painter creating a mural by only ever looking at the tip of their own brush. So how did they achieve such flawless scale and symmetry? Researchers suggest they likely used a system of scaled models and a simple but effective surveying technique. By establishing a central axis line and using stakes and ropes to plot key points, they could transfer a small, detailed design onto the landscape kilometer by kilometer. This implies a sophisticated understanding of geometry and proportion, a mathematical certainty applied to an artistic and ritual vision. The purpose of these earth drawings has sparked endless debate, but their alignments provide crucial clues. Many of the long, straight lines and trapezoids point directly to the horizon positions where the sun rises and sets during the June and December solstices. Others align with the rising points of important stars and constellations as they would have appeared 2 millennia ago. This firmly places the Nazca lines within the celestial framework we have seen globally, a permanent calendar etched into the desert, marking the sun's journey and the turning of the year. Yet there is another, more terrestrial layer to their logic. Fascinating studies have shown a compelling correlation between the locations of the largest glyphs and the presence of underground water sources, aquifers, and subterranean rivers that flow down from the distant Andes. The spider glyph, for instance, is situated directly above a major underground water channel. This suggests the lines were not only an observatory for the sky, but also a map for the lifeblood of the desert. The alignments may have served a dual ritual function, connecting celestial cycles that govern time with the earthly sources that sustained life, perhaps marking pathways for ceremonial processions to pray for water. The Nazca lines, therefore, represent a unique expression of the ancient blueprint. They demonstrate that the same intellectual drive for precision, alignment, and cosmic harmony could manifest as ephemeral-seeming art on an epic, panoramic scale. They were a communal project of faith and knowledge, a message written so large it could only be fully understood from a perspective the creators themselves could never physically achieve, inviting us to wonder who or what they believed was looking down. The Parthenon is a lie in marble, a magnificent deception built to flatter the human eye. High on the Acropolis in Athens, this temple dedicated to the goddess Athena represents a pivotal evolution in the ancient logic we have traced. Here, the universal drive for precision and alignment shifts focus from the cosmos to the observer, from astronomical measurement to the psychology of human perception. The Greeks took the core principles of sacred geometry and engineering stability and refined them into a philosophy of aesthetic perfection. The temple's foundation is not a flat plane, but a gentle, almost imperceptible upward curve. Its majestic columns do not stand perfectly vertical, they lean inward with a subtle inclination. Even the columns themselves are not straight cylinders, they bulge slightly at their center in a technique known as intosses. To the modern mind, this sounds like a series of errors, but to the ancient Greek architect, it was the pinnacle of sophistication. They understood a profound truth about human vision, that perfectly straight lines, when viewed from a distance against a bright sky, can appear to sag or bend outward. So, they intentionally built curves to create the optical illusion of absolute straightness. Every calculated irregularity was a correction for the way we see, ensuring the temple would appear flawless, harmonious, and impossibly alive from every vantage point below. This was architecture as active performance, engaging the viewer in a silent dialogue of perfection. This pursuit of visual harmony was governed by strict mathematics, specifically the golden ratio. This proportion, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears throughout the Parthenon's design. The ratio of its width to its height, the spacing of its columns, even the layout of its sculptural elements, all resonate with this mathematical constant celebrated for its natural beauty. It is the same ratio found in seashells, flower petals, and the human body. By embedding it into their temple, the Greeks were aligning their art with a universal order they perceived in nature itself. The shared logic of precise measurement was no longer just for stability or celestial alignment. It was now in service of an ideal, the creation of a visual and spiritual experience that felt inherently right, balanced, and divine. The Doric columns carved from Pentelic marble demonstrate another layer of this refined logic. Each column is composed of multiple drum sections, stacked with such exactitude that the joints are nearly invisible. This created the appearance of monolithic pillars, a testament to both technical skill and a desire for seamless, pure form. The entire structure was once adorned with vibrant paint and gleaming bronze details, a polychrome masterpiece meant to dazzle under the Mediterranean sun, further enhancing its role as a civic and religious beacon. The Parthenon, therefore, marks a cultural inflection point in our story. It shows how the ancient blueprint could be adapted to serve a society's highest philosophical and artistic values. For the Greeks, beauty was not decorative, it was a moral and mathematical imperative. Their architecture sought to perfect reality, to create an idealized version of the world that inspired civic pride and reflected the glory of their gods. In this white marble temple, we witness the shared construction logic maturing into a language of humanism. The stones are still aligned, the geometry is still sacred, but the ultimate audience is no longer just the stars above. It is the citizen gazing up from the city below, forever convinced they are witnessing perfection made stone. The same logic of monumental stone could be bent into graceful, curving forms to build a kingdom. Far to the south, in the heart of what is now Zimbabwe, stands a complex of ruins that shatters old colonial myths about African history. Great Zimbabwe, a city that flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries, was the capital of a vast and wealthy empire, a hub of trade in gold and ivory that connected the interior of Africa to the coasts of the Indian Ocean. Its grandeur was expressed not in pyramids or temples, but in majestic, free-flowing walls that seemed to grow organically from the granite hills. This is the ancient blueprint expressed through the art of drystone walling, a technique raised to an unprecedented level of skill and symbolic power. The walls themselves are the marvel. Built entirely without mortar, they are composed of thousands of granite blocks, carefully selected and trimmed to fit together in smooth, coursed layers. The builders mastered a method of shaping the stone so precisely that each block locked firmly with its neighbors, creating structures that have withstood centuries of weather. The most iconic section, the Great Enclosure, features a massive outer wall that curves and undulates for over 250 meters, rising to a height of 11 meters in places. This was not a defensive fortification in a traditional sense, but a symbol of immense prestige and authority. Its sheer scale and the labor required to build it were a permanent declaration of the ruler's power, a stone proclamation of control over both people and resources. Within these elegant, enclosing walls, the design reveals a sophisticated understanding of space and even sound. The layout of passages and chambers is not random, it creates specific acoustic effects. In certain areas, sound carries with unusual clarity, allowing a speaker's voice to be heard across distances, while in other, more confined spaces, sound becomes muffled and private. This suggests the architecture was choreographed for ritual and royal ceremony, where the control of sound, of who could hear what and when, was part of the theater of power. At the heart of the great enclosure stands its most enigmatic feature, a solid conical tower. This tower, also built of drystone, mirrors the shape of a nearby granary, a potent symbol in a society whose wealth was rooted in agriculture and cattle. It likely served as a symbolic granary, representing the king's role as the provider and protector of the people's sustenance, blending secular authority with spiritual responsibility for the land's fertility. Great Zimbabwe, therefore, expands the global pattern into a new dimension of meaning. Here, the shared principles of precise stonework and monumental effort were directed toward creating enclosures that defined sacred and royal space. The logic emphasizes containment, prestige, and sensory experience. It proves that this ancient knowledge was not solely for temples to gods or markers for stars, but could be harnessed to build the seat of a living, breathing empire, where architecture itself became the language of political and spiritual unity. The walls of Great Zimbabwe whisper that the blueprint was always adaptable, ready to serve the deepest needs of a culture, whether that need was to reach for the heavens or to gather a kingdom safely within a powerful, graceful embrace. The serpent descends from the sky, not in myth but in stone and shadow. At Chichen Itza, the Great Pyramid known as El Castillo stands not as a silent monument, but as a dynamic, ticking clock designed by the ancient Maya. Here, the shared construction logic we have followed across the world achieves its most theatrical and explicit form, transforming architecture into a living astronomical instrument that performs for its audience twice a year. The entire structure is a mathematical poem dedicated to time itself. Look at its 4 stairways. Each one has 91 steps. Multiply that by 4 and you get 364. Add the single, final step of the top platform, and the total becomes 365, a perfect representation of the solar year. This is not a hidden code, it is an open declaration. The pyramid was quite literally a stairway to count the days, its very geometry a permanent, unchangeable calendar carved into the landscape. But the Maya architects did not stop at static numbers. They engineered a spectacle. The pyramid's corners and tiers are precisely angled. Then, on the afternoons of the spring and autumn equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length, a miracle of light and shadow unfolds. As the sun sets, the stepped corner of the pyramid casts a series of triangular shadows down the balustrade of the northern staircase. These interlocking shadows connect to form the undulating body of a giant serpent, appearing to slither down from the temple at the summit to meet its stone head carved at the base. This is the plumed serpent Kukulkan descending from the heavens to the earth. For the observers gathered in the great plaza below, this was not a metaphor, it was a direct manifestation. The building itself became a portal, using the most fundamental forces of astronomy and geometry to make the divine visible and predictable. It was a guaranteed miracle, scheduled by the cosmos and executed by human genius. This interactive quality sets Chichen Itza apart within our pattern. At Stonehenge, you witness the alignment. At Machu Picchu, you interact with the instrument. But at El Castillo, the architecture stages a full performance for you. It requires an audience to complete its meaning. The shared logic here is about communication, about using impeccable engineering to create a shared experience that reinforces cosmic order and social unity. Every facet of the pyramid, from its stair count to its alignment, works in concert to teach, to awe, and to remind the community of their place within a vast, intelligible universe. The pyramid as astronomical machine shows us the ultimate goal of this ancient knowledge. It was not just to observe the heavens, but to invite them down to dance. The blueprint could also find its meaning in the shape of a mountain. On the sun-baked plains of southern Spain, the Menga Dolmen presents a profound variation on the ancient theme. This is not a pyramid or a temple, but a monumental tomb, a house for the departed built over 5,000 years ago. Its engineering is staggering in its simplicity and scale. The burial chamber is constructed from colossal stone slabs, with the largest capstone alone weighing close to 200 tons. The builders of this Neolithic period moved these megaliths into position with a purpose that feels both intimate and immense, creating a permanent resting place that was clearly meant to be more than just a grave. Inside, the chamber is a long, corridor-like space, cool and quiet, leading to a deep, circular well at its far end. The sheer effort required to construct it speaks of a society with strong communal bonds and a deep reverence for those who came before. But the true genius of Menga and its neighbor the Vieira Dolmen lies not just in the chamber but in where it points. While many megalithic sites across Europe are aligned to sunrise on a solstice or equinox, the Menga Dolmen breaks this pattern in a breathtaking way. Its long central corridor is not oriented to any celestial event. Instead, it points precisely northeast, framing a direct, unobstructed view of a singular, dramatic mountain on the horizon, La Peña de los Enamorados, the Rock of the Lovers. This is a deliberate, powerful choice. It introduces us to the concept of topographical alignment, where the sacred geography of the earth itself, the shape of the land, becomes an integral part of the architectural plan. For the builders, this mountain was not a passive backdrop, it was an active, sacred feature. Its distinctive silhouette, resembling a sleeping giant or a human face in profile, likely held deep mythological or spiritual significance. By aligning their most important communal tomb directly with it, they were forging a permanent symbolic link between the realm of the ancestors and a powerful, eternal feature of their homeland. The mountain became a focal point, a natural monument that gave meaning and direction to the human-made one. This expands our understanding of how these ancient cultures read their environment. Their construction logic was not limited to the dome of the sky above, it also encompassed the living earth below. They saw the landscape as a text filled with meaning, and they designed their structures to converse with it, to incorporate prominent hills, rivers, and rock formations into a unified sacred geography. At Menga, the architecture does not try to mimic the mountain, it acknowledges it. The tomb becomes a sightline, a stone pointer that forever connects the community's memory to a landmark that would outlast every generation. This tells us their worldview was holistic. The cycles of the sun and moon were part of a greater whole that included the immutable bones of the earth. In aligning their dolmen to a mountain, they were anchoring their stories, their lineage, and their rituals to the most permanent thing they knew, the very land that sustained them. It is a quieter expression of the universal logic, one that finds the cosmic not just in the moving stars, but in the silent, sleeping face of a stone giant on the horizon. The logic of the ancients could also turn inward, burrowing deep into the living rock to create a sacred world beneath our feet. On the sun-drenched islands of Malta, the builders chose not to reach for the sky, but to descend into the silent heart of the earth itself. The Saflieni Hypogeum is a labyrinth carved from solid limestone, a multi-level subterranean temple complex created over 5,000 years ago. This is not a natural cave adapted for use. It is a meticulously excavated and architecturally finished structure, an astonishing feat of reverse engineering where sacred space was created by removal, by carving away what was not the temple. Its very existence presents a powerful inversion of the pattern we have seen. Here, the universal drive for monumentality expresses itself not in rising stone, but in excavated void, proving that the sacred could be found just as powerfully in the depths as on the heights. The builders replicated the forms of their above-ground megalithic temples perfectly underground. They carved out rooms with corbelled ceilings that mimic the arches of their stone temples. They shaped doorways and windows into the limestone, and they adorned walls with intricate red ochre spiral paintings. Walking through its 3 excavated levels is a disorienting experience. You are unmistakably inside a sophisticated building, yet the walls are the very bedrock of the island. This was a deliberate, profound choice. It created a permanent, unchanging ritual environment, insulated from the weather and the passage of the sun, a timeless womb of stone dedicated to ceremonies we can only begin to fathom. Then there is the sound. The acoustics within certain chambers of the Hypogeum are nothing short of extraordinary. Specific rooms resonate at particular frequencies, where a deep voice or a rhythmic chant can be heard with amplified clarity throughout the complex, creating an immersive, otherworldly atmosphere. This was not an accident of geology. The shapes of the rooms, the curves of the ceilings, and the placement of niches were all carefully designed to produce these effects. Sound itself became an architectural material as important as the limestone. It suggests that ritual here was an all-encompassing sensory experience, where vibration and resonance were used to alter consciousness, to unify participants, or to communicate with what lay beyond. The Hypogeum, therefore, expands the ancient blueprint into a new dimension, literally. It shows that the shared principles of precise design, symbolic space, and engineered environment were not bound to any single direction. Whether building up toward the stars or down into the earth, the goal was the same: to create a controlled, powerful setting that separated the ritual from the everyday world. In the silent, resonant dark of Malta, we find the same profound understanding that architecture is not just about form, but about the experience it creates, a space where the community could touch something eternal, whether it glimmered in the heavens above or whispered from the stone below. Deep beneath the rice fields of Zhejiang province in China, another world lies hidden in the dark. The Longyu caves are not a natural cavern system, but an artificial labyrinth of staggering ambition, hand-carved from solid sandstone over 2 millennia ago. Discovered only in 1992 by a curious villager draining a pond, this subterranean complex presents an engineering mystery that echoes the Hypogeum of Malta in scale, but with a chilling, industrial uniformity all its own. The sheer volume of work is almost paralyzing to consider. 24 individual caves have been found so far, each one a vast, pillar-supported hall with ceilings soaring up to 30 meters high. The total excavated rock is estimated at nearly 1 million cubic meters. To put that in human terms, if a single person worked every day, moving 1 cubic meter of stone, it would take them over 2,700 years to complete this task. This was not the work of a lone digger, but of an army of laborers operating with a single, coordinated purpose. What greets you inside is not rough, haphazard quarrying. Every single surface, from the soaring ceilings to the walls and the massive support pillars, is covered in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks. These grooves, each about the width of a hand, run in consistent, unbroken bands across thousands of square meters of stone. They create a mesmerizing, rippling texture that transforms the caves from mere holes in the ground into a finished architectural space. This meticulous finishing is the core of the mystery. If the goal was simply to extract sandstone for building material, this level of decorative care makes no sense. It would be like carefully sanding and polishing every inch of a mine shaft. The immense effort spent on this surface patterning suggests the caves themselves were the final product, that being inside this carved, textured environment was the entire point. The construction logic on display here is one of profound structural foresight. The caves are not simple rectangles, they are complex, multi-chambered spaces with sloped walls, pillars placed at precise intervals, and dividing rock walls left between adjacent caverns to prevent collapse. The ancient engineers understood the immense weight of the sandstone above them and designed accordingly. They carved the pillars integrally from the living rock, leaving them in place as they hollowed out the space around them. The angles of the walls and ceilings were carefully calculated to distribute stress. This is not guesswork. It is the application of advanced knowledge of statics and geology to create a safe, permanent underground environment. The uniformity of the chisel marks points to something else, a standardized technique. It is as if every worker was trained in the same method, using the same tools and the same motions to achieve a consistent aesthetic result across this colossal project. This speaks of a highly organized society with a clear chain of command and a shared, unwavering vision. And yet, for all this effort and skill, we have no idea why they did it. No artifacts, no inscriptions, no tools, and no historical records from the period mention these caverns. They were completely forgotten, silently filling with water until the modern day. The purpose is a gaping void at the center of all this precision. Were they imperial storehouses, secret ceremonial centers, a vast underground palace that was never occupied? The care taken with the walls argues against a purely utilitarian function like storage. The scale and coordination suggest a state-sponsored project of immense importance. But what belief, what need, could possibly justify carving out a mountain from the inside, only to leave it empty and unadorned except for those endless, rhythmic grooves? The Longyou caves stand as a monument to a lost intention. They show the ancient blueprint applied not to the heavens or the landscape, but to the creation of pure, enigmatic space. In their silent, textured halls, we see the same drive for precision and permanence, but directed toward a purpose that remains locked in the stone, a secret kept by a million perfectly parallel lines. Above the endless green of the Patane rainforest, the pyramids of Tikal pierce the sky like stone mountains. In this ancient Maya metropolis, the construction logic we have followed becomes a tool of political theater and social unity, expressed through overwhelming verticality and masterful control of sound. The city's layout is a deliberate statement of power, with its grand plazas and soaring temple pyramids arranged to dominate both the physical and psychological landscape. The tallest structure, Temple Roman IV, rises over 70 meters from the jungle floor, its summit offering a ruler a literal god's eye view over his entire domain. This was not merely about seeing, but about being seen, a permanent symbol of authority that was visible for miles, reminding everyone of the central power that held the city together. The architecture here often holds a secret within itself, a nesting of history. Many of Tikal's great pyramids were not single constructions, but successive layers built over earlier, smaller temples. Archaeologists have discovered that structures like the iconic Temple of the Great Jaguar were constructed over the remains of previous royal tombs and shrines. This created a matryoshka doll effect, where each new ruler would literally build his legacy upon the sacred foundations of his ancestors, physically layering the city's history and reinforcing the continuity of dynastic power. The new temple would encapsulate the old, making the past an integral, supporting part of the present monument. This practice shows a profound logic of continuity, where construction was an act of reverence and political legitimization, binding generations together in stone. But the genius of Tikal extends beyond the silent, towering facades. Step into the Great Plaza, the vast ceremonial heart of the city, flanked by Temple I and Temple Roman II. Here, the builders engineered an astonishing acoustic phenomenon. The precise spacing and angles of the stone steps, platforms, and buildings create a natural amplification system. A person speaking in a normal voice from the center of the plaza can be heard with perfect clarity by hundreds of people standing on the steps of the surrounding temples. This was no accident. It was a deliberate design to facilitate public ceremony, where a priest or a ruler could address the gathered populace without strain, their words carrying to every corner of the sacred space. Sound became an architectural material as vital as the limestone itself, used to unify the community through shared ritual and proclamation. In the dense, whispering jungle, this control of space and sound served a crucial purpose: cohesion. The logic at Tikal was about creating a focused, human-made order against the sprawling, chaotic backdrop of the rainforest. The towering pyramids pulled the eye upward, marking a clear center. The acoustically tuned plazas pulled the community together, ensuring everyone could participate in the same moment. Every aspect of the construction, from the staggering height of the temples to the resonant properties of the courtyards, worked in concert to reinforce social hierarchy, shared belief, and civic identity. At Tikal, the ancient blueprint was used to build not just a city, but a collective experience, proving that stone could be shaped to conduct both awe and unity, echoing through the centuries long after the last voice fell silent. Behind the polished walls of Seti, the first temple at Abydos, a secret lies buried. The Osirian is a stark granite echo from a different time, an underground chamber of such raw, colossal power that it feels alien even within the land of the pyramids. To enter it is to step out of the refined world of pharaonic Egypt and into something far more ancient and far more severe. The structure is a perfect rectangle of massive red granite blocks, each one weighing many tons, set within a larger rectangular pit. A moat of water surrounds this central island, creating a symbolic river encircling a sacred precinct. The architecture is brutally simple, Cyclopean, built with blocks so large and fitted with such exactitude that it mirrors the megalithic styles we have seen at sites like Sacsayhuaman or even Göbekli Tepe, rather than the more refined, hieroglyph-covered temples of the New Kingdom. This creates a profound dissonance. It sits directly behind a temple built by one of Egypt's great pharaohs, yet it appears to belong to a completely different school of construction, one that valued overwhelming mass and geometric purity over decoration and inscription. This is not an evolution of Egyptian style, it is an anomaly preserved within it. So what is it doing here? Many Egyptologists interpret the Osirian as a symbolic tomb for the god Osiris, the lord of the underworld and resurrection. The surrounding water channel would then represent the primordial waters of Nun, from which all life emerged, and the central island the first land, the mound of creation. This fits perfectly with Egyptian mythology, but the architectural language speaks of something older. The sheer size of the stones, the lack of ornamentation, the focus on fundamental geometric forms, all point to a building tradition that prioritizes eternal stability and cosmic symbolism over narrative art. It feels less like a temple built in its own time and more like a conscious recreation of a style remembered as sacred and primordial. This is where the celestial connection deepens the mystery. Osiris himself was intimately linked with the constellation of Orion in Egyptian belief. The soul of the god was said to dwell among those stars. Intriguingly, the orientation and layout of the Osirian have been studied for potential alignments to that very constellation. While debate continues, the possibility is compelling. It suggests the builders were not just telling a myth with statues and paintings, they were encoding it into the very orientation and form of the architecture, using the same logic of astronomical alignment we have seen globally. The Osirian, therefore, acts as a crucial piece of evidence within our puzzle. It is as if the New Kingdom Egyptians, masters of their own sophisticated architectural language, felt compelled to include within their sacred complex a building in an older, more severe dialect. This could be a stone memory, a deliberate preservation of what they believed was an archaic and therefore more powerful form of sacred construction. It implies that the Egyptians themselves were looking back, recognizing a legacy of building that predated their own glorious civilization. They may have been referencing a primordial blueprint they considered divinely inspired, embedding it like a fossil within their own work to lend it the authority of deep time. In this quiet, water-filled chamber, we are not just looking at an Egyptian monument. We are possibly looking at an Egyptian homage to the very same ancient logic we have been tracing across the world, a tradition they revered enough to bury, perfectly preserved, right in the heart of their own sacred ground. Thousands of stones stand in silent regiments across the Breton landscape. The Karnak alignments are not a circle, not a temple, not a tomb. They are a vast, open-air diagram drawn with granite pillars, an expression of the ancient logic that chose repetition and linear order on a breathtaking scale. Over 3,000 individual menhirs, some standing 4 meters tall, are arranged in a series of parallel rows that march across the countryside for several kilometers. To walk among them is to feel a different kind of awe, less about vertical majesty and more about relentless horizontal purpose. This was not about creating a single focal point, but about marking the land itself with a geometric statement so large it can only be understood from a distance, or perhaps from above. The effort is almost beyond comprehension. Each stone, quarried and shaped, had to be transported and then erected with its long axis aligned precisely with the others in its row. This represents generations of coordinated labor, a society that committed its collective strength to a project whose meaning seems deliberately abstracted from everyday use. So what was the function of this stone forest? The most enduring theory points once again to the sky. Certain alignments appear to target the rising and setting points of the sun and moon at key times of the year, particularly the solstices. The long, straight rows could have served as colossal sightlines, a linear calendar for tracking celestial cycles that govern planting, harvest, and ritual. In this view, Karnak is a cousin to Stonehenge, but one that uses rows instead of a circle to map the heavens. Other interpretations look to the Earth. Some researchers note the site's location on major geological fault lines and propose the stones could mark areas of telluric energy or unusual seismic activity, acting as markers for forces the builders sensed within the ground itself. More speculative ideas discuss the stone's potential piezoelectric properties, suggesting they might interact with electrical charges in the atmosphere during storms, though this remains a fringe hypothesis. A more grounded theory sees the rows as a social and territorial map. The sheer scale and visibility of the alignments would have served as a powerful, permanent statement of communal identity and control over the landscape. They may have marked processional routes for seasonal gatherings, or defined sacred territories separating the realm of the living from that of the ancestors or the gods. The linear logic of Karnak is a distinct variation on the global theme. It shows that the same drive for precision and order could manifest not in enclosing space, but in directing movement and vision across it. The builders were thinking in lines and grids, using repetition to create rhythm and emphasis on a geographic canvas. This required a sophisticated understanding of large-scale planning and survey, an ability to maintain straight alignments over hills and valleys that speaks to advanced geometric knowledge. Unlike the intimate chamber of a hypogeum or the focused peak of a pyramid, Karnak feels public, expansive, and democratic. Its power lies in its multiplicity, in the combined presence of thousands of individual stones submitting to a single, overwhelming pattern. It is a monument that makes you ask not what is inside it, but what you are supposed to see through it. The silent rows offer no inscriptions, no carvings, just the enduring fact of their alignment, a code written in granite that we are still learning to read. Derinkuyu is a city built in reverse, a community that chose to thrive in the dark. In the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, this astonishing underground metropolis descends over 250 feet into the earth, a labyrinth of 18 levels that could shelter up to 20,000 people along with their livestock and food stores. While the sites we have explored reached for the stars, Derinkuyu embodies a different, equally powerful imperative, the drive to secure survival against overwhelming threat. Here, the shared logic of precise stonework and communal effort is applied not to celestial observation, but to the art of enduring siege, transforming soft volcanic rock into a fortress of breathtaking ingenuity. The entire complex is a masterclass in defensive engineering, carved from a material called tuff, a stone soft enough to shape with hand tools yet strong enough to form stable ceilings and walls. The builders did not merely dig caves, they designed an entire subterranean ecosystem with a singular focus: long-term habitability under duress. Massive, circular stone doors, each weighing up to half a ton, could be rolled across key passageways from the inside, sealing off entire sections of the city in case of intrusion. These were not simple barriers, they were strategic components, allowing defenders to control the flow of any potential invader, compartmentalizing the labyrinth for maximum security. Ventilation was solved with over 50 meticulously engineered shafts, some reaching all the way to the surface, providing a constant, unseen flow of fresh air to even the deepest chambers. Fresh water was accessed through protected wells dug down to the water table, ensuring a supply independent of surface sources that could be poisoned or cut off. The city contained everything needed for life: stables, storage rooms, communal kitchens, wine presses, chapels, and even schools, all connected by a network of steep, narrow corridors designed to force any attacker into a vulnerable, single-file advance. This represents a profound expansion of the ancient engineering knowledge we have been tracing. At Derinkuyu, the same core skills of geology, precise excavation, and large-scale planning were directed toward a new set of problems: airflow, water access, waste management, and psychological resilience in confinement. The builders were thinking in terms of systems, of creating a self-contained, sustainable world that could function for months completely cut off from the surface. This was architecture as a lifeboat carved from the very bedrock. While you will find no solstice alignments or sacred geometry in its tunnels, Derinkuyu shares the fundamental principle of modifying the earth with profound intentionality and foresight. It is a testament to the flexibility of human ingenuity when faced with existential pressure. The silent blueprint in this context becomes a manual for communal preservation. It shows us that the drive to shape stone for a collective purpose could manifest just as powerfully in retreat as in aspiration, in creating a safe, dark womb for a community to wait out the storm, proving that survival itself can be the highest form of sacred geometry. The stones of Baalbek do not ask for your belief, they demand your awe. At the Temple of Jupiter in Lebanon, the ancient logic we have followed reaches a staggering, almost impossible crescendo in raw tonnage. Here, the shared principles of megalithic engineering are not just applied, they are pushed to a scale that seems to defy the very physics of the ancient world. The foundation platform, known as the Baalbek Terrace, is constructed from some of the largest cut stones ever handled by human hands. 3 of these blocks, famously called the trilithon, are positioned side by side. Each one measures over 19 meters long, 4 meters high, and 4 meters wide. The weight of a single block is estimated at over 800 tons. To put that in perspective, that is heavier than a fully loaded jumbo jet, and there are 3 of them, set with such precision that their joints are nearly invisible, forming a seamless foundation wall that has withstood millennia of earthquakes and conflict. The question of how they were moved from the quarry over a kilometer away and then lifted into position over 20 feet high is not just a puzzle, it is the central mystery of the site. The standard explanations of log rollers, levers, and immense manpower begin to strain under such colossal weight. The friction alone would be tremendous, the risk of the stone crushing its own wooden track a constant danger. Some researchers propose a system of counterweighted cranes or complex ramp and lever arrangements, but no single theory provides a definitive, universally accepted answer. The logistics speak of a society with an almost obsessive commitment to a single goal, marshalling thousands of workers in a coordinated ballet of ropes, wood, and sheer determination. But the trilithon is not even the full story. In the nearby quarry lies an even more mind-bending artifact, the stone of the pregnant woman. This single, partially carved block remains attached to the bedrock. Its estimated dimensions suggest that if it had been extracted, it would have weighed around 1,650 tons. That is more than 2 trilithon blocks combined. It was never moved, perhaps because its size finally exceeded even the builder's formidable capabilities, or because the project's needs changed. Its very existence, however, is a statement. It tells us that the ambition at Baalbek was not limited by the practical stones they used, but by a vision that reached for something even grander. This brings us to the purpose behind such extreme effort. While the temple was dedicated to Jupiter and other Roman gods, its construction reused a far older sacred site. The megalithic terrace itself is pre-Roman, likely built by a civilization with a much deeper local tradition of monumental stonework. This suggests the Romans, master engineers themselves, were building upon a foundation, both literal and symbolic, that was already revered for its scale and antiquity. At Baalbek, the shared logic manifests as a demonstration of supreme technological and organizational mastery. Lifting an 800-ton stone is not just a construction step, it is a performance. It is a tangible, permanent display of a culture's ability to command the very elements of the earth. This act would have had immense religious and political power, proving the favor of the gods and the unquestionable authority of the ruler who commanded it. The temple's function was to honor the gods, but its foundation was a monument to human will. In these stones, we see the ancient drive not just to align with the cosmos or to create sacred space, but to conquer weight itself, to achieve the seemingly impossible as a testament to a civilization's place in the world. Baalbek stands at the extreme end of our spectrum, where the logic becomes a language of pure, overwhelming scale. The sun itself rolls across the shore in a chariot of stone. At Konark, on the eastern coast of India, the ancient logic finds its most ornate and narrative expression, transforming a temple into a frozen epic. The Sun Temple is built as a literal, colossal representation of the chariot of the god Surya, with 12 pairs of intricately carved stone wheels, each over 3 meters in diameter, and the entire monument seemingly drawn by 7 mighty stone horses. This is not a building decorated with symbols, it is a symbol that has been built, a myth made manifest in sandstone. The construction logic here is one of total artistic synthesis, where every single architectural element is subsumed into a grand, unified story. The temple's form is its function to tell the tale of the sun's daily journey across the heavens, pulling light and time behind it. This represents a breathtaking evolution of the principles we have seen, from the abstract alignments of Stonehenge to the theatrical light shows of Chichen Itza, and now to a fully sculpted cosmological narrative. The 24 wheels are far more than decorative. Each one is a masterpiece of iconography, covered in detailed carvings of floral patterns, divine figures, and scenes of daily life. But they also serve a precise, practical purpose. The spokes of the wheels are designed to act as sundials. By observing the shadow cast by a specific spoke onto the carved markings of the wheel, priests could accurately tell the time of day. This brilliant integration means the temple itself, in the very act of representing the sun's chariot, also becomes its timekeeping instrument. The wheels do not just depict the passage of time, they measure it, turning the entire facade into a giant, functional clock. This fusion of art and science is the temple's genius. The alignment continues this celestial choreography. The main entrance is positioned so that the first rays of the rising sun would flood through the doorway and illuminate the sanctum, bathing the idol within in a divine glow. The entire layout is oriented to capture specific solar angles throughout the year, making the architecture a participant in the daily ritual of worship. The sun was not just a subject carved on the wall, it was an active, illuminating presence invited into the structure's heart. The engineering behind this poetic vision is equally formidable. The temple was constructed using a unique method of interlocking iron beams and plates within the stone masonry, a hidden skeletal structure that provided immense strength. This allowed for the creation of towering, ornate spires and the vast, cantilevered weight of the stone wheels without collapse. The builders thought like both sculptors and engineers, ensuring that their magnificent symbolic vision would stand the test of time and the region's powerful cyclones. The Konark Sun Temple, therefore, shows the ancient blueprint refined into a language of total art. It proves that the shared drive for astronomical alignment, precise engineering, and sacred meaning could be expressed not through stark geometry, but through exuberant, detailed storytelling. Here, the cosmos is not just observed, it is personified, driven across the shore in a chariot of stone that still tells the time, a monument where myth and masonry are inseparably fused. The ocean floor holds its own silent ruins. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, a series of massive, geometric formations rest beneath the waves, a submerged puzzle that blurs the line between geology and architecture. Known as the Yonaguni Monument, this site presents terraces with sharp, 90-degree angles, straight walls that run for meters, and what appear to be carved staircases descending into the blue depths. The sheer regularity of the shapes feels intentional, as if a giant's hand had sculpted the bedrock shelf into a grand, sunken plaza. This discovery thrusts our search for the ancient logic into a new and challenging environment, the continental shelf, and asks a profound question: are we looking at a natural wonder or the drowned remnant of a forgotten civilization? The debate is fierce and fascinating. Geologists point to the region's unique sandstone, which naturally fractures along horizontal and vertical planes due to tectonic stress. They argue that powerful ocean currents over thousands of years could have eroded these fractures, creating the stepped platforms and flat surfaces that look so eerily man-made. It is a compelling argument for the power of natural forces to mimic design, yet other researchers highlight features that are harder to explain through erosion alone. They point to two round holes, each about 2 meters deep, drilled side by side into the rock. They note narrow channels that seem too straight and uniform, and a triangular rock that looks precisely shaped. Most striking is a tall, isolated pillar that appears to stand apart from the main formation, which some suggest could have served as a support for a structure long since vanished. If even a portion of this site was shaped by human hands, the implications are staggering. The construction logic here, if artificial, would be one of adaptation to a changing world. The monument sits on a coastal shelf that was above water during the last ice age, when global sea levels were over 100 meters lower. This places its potential construction window between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, a time when our understanding of human technological capability is being radically rewritten by sites like Göbekli Tepe. The builders would have been working directly on the bedrock of a coastal plain, quarrying and shaping the living stone of their shoreline. Their techniques would have mirrored those of terrestrial megalithic cultures, but with a unique maritime context, perhaps creating a ceremonial center, a fishery, or a navigational marker for a people intimately connected to the sea. Then, as the glaciers melted and the oceans rose, this place would have been slowly, inexorably claimed by the water, abandoned and forgotten over centuries. This possibility forces us to expand our search in a literal sense. If Yonaguni is artificial, it suggests that the blueprint we have been tracing was not confined to the land masses we see today. Our planet's coastlines have changed dramatically since the last ice age. Vast, fertile stretches of continental shelf, which were once dry land and home to human populations, now lie submerged. How many other sites, how many other expressions of this ancient knowledge might be resting on the seafloor, waiting to be found? The search for our shared past must now look beneath the waves, scanning the drowned landscapes that were once the thriving frontiers of prehistoric humanity. Whether a stunning work of nature or a monument lost to the sea, Yonaguni serves as a powerful symbol. It represents the ultimate frontier for our investigation, a reminder that the Earth itself has hidden chapters of its history. It challenges our timelines, our maps, and our assumptions about where and when advanced building concepts could have emerged. This submerged mystery whispers that the full story of the ancient logic may be incomplete, with key pieces still lying in the silent, blue darkness, waiting for the currents to shift and reveal another clue. These conical towers rise from the Sardinian landscape like stone sentinels from a forgotten age. The Nurag, built over 3,000 years ago during the Bronze Age, present our shared construction logic in a uniquely practical and pervasive form. Unlike the singular, awe-inspiring pyramids or temples we have visited, the Nurag are everywhere on the island, with over 7,000 of these structures dotting the hills and plains. They were not rare ceremonial centers, but the very backbone of society, a localized, everyday application of megalithic genius for defense, community, and identity. Each Nurag is a fortress of simple, powerful geometry, a conical tower built from large, rough-hewn blocks of basalt, fitted together without any mortar. The walls are thick, often several meters across at the base, and they slope inward as they rise, creating a stable, truncated cone that could withstand both attack and the relentless passage of centuries. The entrance is typically a low, narrow doorway, forcing any would-be intruder to crouch and enter single file, a clear defensive feature, but step inside and the true engineering sophistication is revealed. The interior is not a dark cavity, but a complex, multi-level space. The builders used a technique called corbelling to create domed chambers. They would lay each successive ring of stones slightly inward over the one below, until the walls curved to meet at a point overhead, forming a perfect, self-supporting dome. This required a precise understanding of weight distribution and static equilibrium, ensuring the massive stone ceiling would not collapse under its own weight. Often, a narrow, spiral staircase was built within the thickness of the wall itself, leading to an upper chamber or a rooftop terrace. This internal complexity, hidden within a brutalist exterior, speaks of a deep, quiet mastery of stone. The logic here is profoundly communal and territorial. A single Nurag often stood at the heart of a village, a circular cluster of stone huts where the community lived. The tower was both a lookout post and a final refuge, a stronghold where people and their livestock could gather in times of danger, but the pattern goes further. Many Nurag are positioned within sight of one another, forming a visible network across the island. From the top of one tower, you could see the smoke signal or reflected light from its neighbor, creating a rapid communication chain that could alert the entire region. This suggests a society that was not isolated but interconnected, a networked civilization using its monumental architecture as a system for security and social cohesion. This transforms our understanding of the ancient blueprint. At sites like Göbekli Tepe, the massive effort was for ritual gathering. At the Nurag, that same effort was invested directly into the fabric of daily life and survival. The construction principles of megalithic polygonal masonry, precise static engineering, and strategic placement were harnessed not for a priesthood or a pharaoh, but for the entire community. They built these towers to last, not for a season, but for millennia, creating a permanent, tangible claim on the land and a safe haven for generations. The Nurag represent the logic made ordinary, woven into the very landscape of home. They show us that this ancient knowledge could be democratized, used to build a resilient society where every village had its own stone mountain, a testament to a people who knew how to build their world from the ground up, one massive block at a time. Before a single stone was laid at Machu Picchu, a city of pyramids was already ancient. Carol, nestled in the arid Soup Valley of Peru, is a whisper from the dawn of civilization in the Americas, flourishing over 4,600 years ago. This is not a fortress or a temple complex in isolation. It is a fully realized city with residential neighborhoods, amphitheaters, and monumental public architecture, all organized under a master plan that speaks of a sophisticated and peaceful society. Here, the ancient logic we have been tracing manifests not in defensive walls or cryptic symbols, but in the very birth of urban life, showing us that the principles of communal effort and cosmic alignment were foundational to the first cities themselves. The layout of Caral is a study in intentional design. At its heart lie two large, sunken circular plazas, their curved bowls carved into the earth, flanked by 6 massive platform mounds or pyramids. These structures are not randomly placed. They are arranged around a central public space in a way that creates a clear hierarchy and flow, separating the sacred ceremonial areas from the residential sectors where people lived in comfortable, well-built homes. This indicates a society with a strong central authority, one capable of organizing thousands of workers not for war, but for communal creation. The labor was dedicated to moving immense amounts of earth and stone to shape the landscape itself, building terraces and raising pyramids that would define the city's skyline for centuries. This urban plan was deeply connected to the cosmos. The main pyramid, known as the Pyramide Maya, is aligned with specific stars. Its central staircase points toward the rising of the constellation we know as the Southern Cross during the era of Carol's peak. Other structures align with the solstices and the movements of the moon. This celestial choreography was woven into the city's daily life, turning the entire urban grid into a living observatory. The rhythms of planting, harvest, and ceremony were governed by the stars observed from these man-made mountains, anchoring the community's sense of time and purpose to the heavens above their desert home. But the true engineering marvel of Caral lies beneath the surface, in its ingenious answer to a constant threat, earthquakes. The builders faced a serious challenge: how to construct tall, heavy pyramids on alluvial soil in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Their solution was both simple and brilliant: the shikra. A shikra is a mesh bag woven from reeds or grasses which was filled with stones from the nearby riverbed. These bags were not used as simple rubble fill. They were employed as active, flexible foundational elements. Builders would lay a course of these stone-filled bags, then cover them with a layer of compacted earth, then another layer of bags, building up the core of the pyramid like a layered cake. The genius of this system is in its flexibility. During an earthquake, the individual stones within the mesh bags can shift and settle independently. The bags themselves give slightly, absorbing and dissipating the seismic energy, rather than resisting it as a solid, monolithic block of masonry would. This prevents the kind of catastrophic cracking that could topple a rigid structure. It is earthquake engineering in its most elegant, low-tech form, using locally sourced, sustainable materials to create immense stability. The shikra system reveals a profound understanding of physics and material science, an innovation born from careful observation of their environment. Caral presents a powerful, peaceful vision of the ancient blueprint. There is no evidence of warfare, no defensive fortifications, no stockpiles of weapons. Instead, we find musical instruments made of bone and reed, evidence of trade with distant regions for precious shells and minerals, and a city plan designed for ceremony, commerce, and community living. This suggests that the shared logic of monumental construction could serve as a catalyst for social cohesion and cultural flourishing, not just as a tool of power. At Caral, the drive to build in harmony with the cosmos and the earth was inseparable from the drive to build a society. It shows us that the first light of urban civilization in the Americas was not lit by conflict, but by collective ambition, guided by the stars and secured by bags of cleverly placed stones. At Ellora, the mountain itself became the temple. The Kailasa temple is not a structure that was assembled stone by stone, but a vision that was revealed by removing everything that was not the temple. Imagine the process in reverse, a team of master sculptors standing atop a solid, living cliff of basalt, looking down at the raw rock and seeing within it an entire sacred complex, complete with multi-story towers, intricate pillars, courtyards, bridges, and life-sized stone elephants. Their task was not to build up, but to carve down, a monumental act of faith and precision that required them to think in negative space. They began at the top of the ridge and worked their way downward, painstakingly excavating an estimated 200,000 tons of rock. This is not quarrying, it is sculpting on a geographic scale, where a single miscalculation with a chisel could ruin an entire wall or collapse a planned bridge. There were no second chances, no way to glue a piece back on. Every cut had to be perfect from the very first strike. The entire project was a breathtaking gamble executed with absolute certainty. This method represents a profound inversion of the construction logic we have seen across the world. At Göbekli Tepe, pillars were erected. At the Great Pyramid, blocks were stacked. Here at Ellora, the architecture was already present, imprisoned within the mountain. The builder's role was to liberate it, to set the form free from the formless stone. This required a planning stage of almost unimaginable foresight. They could not adjust the design as they went, adding a wing here or a chamber there. The entire three-dimensional blueprint, from the highest peak of the main tower to the deepest floor of the inner sanctum, had to be fully conceived in the mind before a single worker struck the cliff face. They likely used a system of detailed measurements and markings transferred from small-scale models, mapping the entire complex onto the vertical and horizontal planes of the rock. The result is a structure that feels both impossibly delicate and immovably permanent. Elaborate friezes depicting scenes from Hindu epics cover the walls, all carved directly from the living rock. Pillars, each with uniquely detailed capitals, stand in rows, but they are not separate stones. They are still connected to the ceiling from which they were carved. This creates a surreal unity, a space where every element is eternally part of a single, gigantic stone entity. The central shrine houses a symbolic representation of Mount Kailash, the Himalayan abode of the god Shiva, making the entire temple a symbolic recreation of a mythical cosmic mountain, carved from a very real mountain. This brings the ancient logic full circle in a deeply philosophical way. At so many sites, humanity built mountains to reach the gods. At Ellora, they found a mountain and revealed the god within it. The same principles of sacred geometry, precise alignment, and awe-inspiring scale are all present, but the method is a masterpiece of subtraction. It proves that the shared knowledge was not about a specific technique of assembly, but about a core understanding of form, space, and intention. Whether adding megaliths or removing bedrock, the goal was the same: to create a permanent home for the divine here on Earth, a testament to what human hands, guided by an unwavering vision, could coax from the raw materials of the world. A single man built a castle from coral in the sweltering Florida heat. Edward Leedskalnin, a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant, spent 28 years from 1923 to 1951 single-handedly quarrying, carving, and erecting over 1,100 tons of oolite limestone. The blocks at Coral Castle are not small. Many weigh multiple tons, with the largest monolith, a 9-ton revolving gate that moves with the touch of a finger, standing as a feat of perfect balance. Leedskalnin worked almost entirely at night, shrouding his methods in secrecy. When asked how he accomplished such impossible tasks, he would simply smile and say he understood the laws of weight and leverage, and that he knew the secrets of the pyramids. His small, hand-forged tools, still on display, seem laughably inadequate for the work, consisting of simple tripods, chains, and metal bars. This modern site, built within living memory, does not belong to the ancient world, yet it echoes its deepest mystery with startling clarity. It is a one-man, 20th century testament to the same core puzzle we have followed across millennia. How does a human being move mountains of stone with such breathtaking precision? The methods Leedskalnin claimed to use involved an understanding of magnetism and celestial forces. He spoke of perceiving the natural currents that move through the earth and the stars, suggesting that the true secret was not in brute force, but in a kind of applied cosmic knowledge. While mainstream science remains skeptical, viewing his work as a clever, if poorly documented, application of leverage and patience, the sheer scale of his solitary achievement forces a humbling parallel. It demonstrates that even with our modern understanding of physics and engineering, the specific techniques behind megalithic construction can remain personally elusive, locked within the mind of the builder. Coral Castle acts as a powerful, modern anecdote in our global search. It proves that the fascination with this ancient logic is not confined to archaeologists and historians. It is a living puzzle that continues to captivate the inventive human spirit. Here was a man, outside any established tradition or school, who felt compelled to replicate the monumental in miniature, to prove to himself and the world that the old secrets were still knowable. His work bridges the gap between ancient wonder and modern curiosity. It asks us, if one man with simple tools in the last century could achieve this, what does that imply about the collective, focused will of an entire ancient culture? The castle, now a quiet park surrounded by suburban sprawl, stands as a poignant reminder. The techniques may be lost, but the drive to shape the world with stone, to align personal vision with immutable material, is a thread that connects Edward Leedskalnin in Florida to the unknown masons of Giza, to the sculptors of Easter Island, and to the builders of Göbekli Tepe. It suggests the logic is not just about stones, but about a persistent human desire to leave a permanent mark by mastering the most permanent substance of all. The stones of Gigantoja are so large they gave birth to a legend of giants. On the island of Gozo, these two ancient temples rise from the earth, their walls built from colossal limestone blocks, some stretching over 5 meters long and weighing more than 50 tons. When you stand before them, the scale feels almost supernatural, as if only beings of immense stature could have assembled such a fortress for the gods. Yet these are not fortresses, they are among the oldest free-standing stone structures in the world, built 1,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. Here, the ancient blueprint we have traced manifests in a form dedicated entirely to the cycles of life, birth, and the nurturing earth. The construction logic is both familiar and uniquely refined. The most striking feature is the temple's concave facade, a graceful inward curve that sweeps across the front of the complex. This is not a structural necessity. It is an artistic and symbolic choice, creating a welcoming, embracing shape that draws you inward. It transforms the entrance from a simple doorway into a ceremonial threshold, a curved arm of stone gathering the community into the sacred space. Behind this elegant front, the builders employed the technique of corbelling to create the interior chambers. They layered each course of stone slightly inward over the one below, gradually narrowing the space until it could be capped with a slab. This created domed, hive-like rooms without needing any arches or supporting beams, a testament to their understanding of weight and balance. The interiors feel womb-like, enclosed and protective, carved from the living rock of the island itself. The sheer mass of the individual blocks is what fuels the enduring local folklore. For generations, the Maltese spoke of a giantess named Sansuna who built these temples single-handedly, carrying the massive stones on her head while nursing an infant. This legend is more than a quaint story. It is a cultural memory encoded in myth, acknowledging that the achievement seemed beyond ordinary human capability. It echoes the same awe we feel at Baalbek or Easter Island, that instinctive question, how did they do this? The answer, as always, lies in communal effort, clever leverage, and generations of patient skill. But the legend preserves the essential truth that this work was extraordinary. This monumental effort was dedicated to a powerful, life-affirming purpose. The Gigantoja temples are deeply associated with fertility cults. Archaeologists have found numerous figurines within them, stylized statues of voluptuous female forms, symbols of a great mother goddess. These artifacts suggest the temples were centers for rituals pleading for bountiful harvests, healthy livestock, and the continuation of the community itself. The architecture supports this reading, the rounded, enclosed chambers evoking a sense of primal security and generative power. This was a place where stone was asked to intercede with the forces of life. That connection between stone and cycle is cemented by the temple's orientation. The main entrances face southeast. Researchers studying this alignment propose it was designed to capture the first light of the rising sun during important seasonal festivals, perhaps the autumn equinox or key agricultural dates. On those mornings, the dawn would not just illuminate the entrance, it would penetrate deep into the central corridor, bathing the innermost altars in a golden, life-giving light. This practice of solar alignment, so familiar from sites across the globe, is here married directly to a fertility ritual. The sun's return, the earth's bounty, and the community's prayers were all woven together in a single architectural moment. Gigantoja distills the ancient logic to its most essential human scale. There is no encoded pi, no planetary alignments, no defensive purpose. It is a community's profound investment in its own future, built with the largest stones they could possibly manage, shaped into a nurturing, inward-focused form, and aligned to the sun's promise of renewal. In these quiet, massive halls, we see the blueprint not as a cosmic mystery, but as a heartfelt petition written in limestone for life itself to endure. Mohenjo-Daro was a city of perfect right angles. In the fertile floodplain of the Indus River, over 4,000 years ago, a civilization chose to build its metropolis not around a towering pyramid or a central temple, but around an idea, the principle of the grid. Here, the ancient logic we have been tracing shifts its focus from the cosmos to the community, expressing itself through an unprecedented commitment to social order, public health, and meticulous standardization. The entire city was laid out on a precise north-south and east-west axis, a vast geometric diagram etched into the earth with streets that intersect at perfect 90-degree angles. This was not a loose approximation. It was a rigid, master-planned urban environment executed with an almost mathematical certainty. The logic here is one of modular design, applied to the scale of an entire civilization. Every brick tells this story. The builders of Mohenjo-Daro did not use stones of random size. They manufactured standardized, kiln-fired clay bricks in a uniform ratio of 4:2:1. This meant that a brick laid lengthwise was twice as long as it was wide, and 4 times as long as it was thick. This single, simple proportion allowed for incredible structural flexibility and speed of construction. Walls could be laid in alternating courses for strength, corners could be bonded securely, and entire neighborhoods could rise with a predictable, efficient rhythm. It was mass production applied to urbanism millennia before the Industrial Revolution, a testament to a society that valued harmony and uniformity in its very building blocks. This obsession with order extended far beyond the street plan. The city was equipped with what might be the world's first integrated municipal sanitation system. A network of covered drains ran beneath the streets, channeling wastewater away from residential areas and into sumps. Houses had private bathing areas and chutes for waste, all connected to this larger public grid. This was not a luxury, it was a public health imperative born from a dense urban environment. It reveals a profound collective understanding that the well-being of the individual was inseparable from the hygiene of the whole. At the city's heart stood the Great Bath, a large, watertight public tank built with precisely fitted bricks and sealed with a layer of natural tar. Its proportions are perfect, its construction flawless. While its exact ritual purpose is debated, its existence speaks volumes. Here, the principles of precision and careful engineering were applied not to a granary or a drain, but to a space dedicated to purification and possibly spiritual ceremony. It represents the seamless fusion we have seen elsewhere, where the same technical mastery served both the utterly practical and the deeply sacred. The bath's orientation, like the city itself, aligns with the cardinal directions, subtly weaving that cosmic order into the fabric of daily civic life. Mohenjo-Daro presents a powerful, peaceful vision of the ancient blueprint. There are no grand palaces screaming of a single ruler's ego, no obvious fortifications for war. Instead, we find well-built, comfortable houses, public wells, and large, centralized granaries that suggest a form of collective storage and wealth distribution. The logic here was societal. It was about creating a stable, healthy, and equitable environment for tens of thousands of people to thrive together. The grid was more than a street plan. It was a physical manifestation of a social contract, a promise of fairness and predictability made in brick and mortar. In this meticulously planned city, we see the shared knowledge adapted to solve the most human of problems: how to live together in health and harmony, generation after generation. It proves that the drive for precision could be the foundation not just of temples, but of civilization itself. These threads now weave together into a single, unmistakable tapestry. From the pyramids of Giza to the moai of Easter Island, from the grid of Mohenjo-Daro to the celestial stage of Chichen Itza, a set of core principles repeats with a consistency that cannot be ignored. The evidence is written in the language of the stones themselves. First, a reverence for the cardinal directions, an obsession with aligning human creation to the fundamental axes of the earth. Second, a mastery of megalithic stonework, moving and shaping colossal blocks with a precision that defies simple tools. Third, a deep integration of astronomical events, turning architecture into a calendar and an observatory, forever linking the monument to the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. And fourth, the quiet hum of sacred mathematics, the same elegant ratios like pi and the golden mean appearing in structures oceans apart. When you see these four threads appear together time and again, you are no longer looking at isolated cultures. You are looking at a pattern, a shared architectural fingerprint left on our planet. This pattern forces us to confront two profound possibilities, each with its own world-shifting implications. The first possibility is diffusion, the idea of a common source. Could this knowledge have originated from a single, advanced ancestral civilization, now lost to history or submerged beneath the seas? This source, whether we call it a forgotten school of master builders or a now vanished culture, would have possessed this integrated package of astronomy, geometry, and engineering. Their influence, their travelers, or their surviving disciples could have carried this blueprint across the continents, planting the seeds that would later grow into the pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Mexico, and the stone circles of Europe. This theory finds a haunting echo in the submerged structures like Yonaguni and the ancient foundational feel of sites like Göbekli Tepe, which suggest a deep pre-flood origin point for these ideas. It is the story of a single, bright flame that once burned, whose sparks traveled on the winds of time and migration to ignite similar fires across the globe. The second possibility is perhaps even more remarkable, that of parallel development. This view suggests there was no single teacher. Instead, advanced human minds in different corners of the world, when confronted with the same fundamental challenges, independently arrived at nearly identical solutions. What were those universal challenges? The desire to build something that would last for eternity, to create a permanent mark against the fleeting nature of human life. The need to honor the divine or the ancestral by constructing a home worthy of them, a bridge between earth and heaven, the practical challenge of moving immense weight and achieving perfect stability, especially in earthquake-prone regions. And the universal human experience of looking up at the night sky, seeing patterns, and yearning to understand our place within that grand celestial clockwork. When brilliant, observant people dedicate generations to solving these profound puzzles, they may inevitably discover the same truths, that true north provides the most stable orientation, that interlocking polygonal stones resist seismic shock, that tracking solstices creates a reliable calendar, and that certain geometric proportions simply feel harmonious because they are woven in the fabric of nature itself. In this light, the shared logic is not a transmitted secret, but a discovered universal, like multiple cultures independently inventing the wheel or discovering fermentation. So which is it, a lost common ancestor or the independent genius of humanity? The answer may not be a simple choice between one or the other. Perhaps it is a blend. Early, foundational knowledge from a primordial source could have provided the initial spark, the core concepts of sky watching and stone shaping. As human populations spread and diverged, isolated groups then adapted and refined these principles to their unique environments, mythologies, and social needs, leading to the beautiful diversity of forms we see, from Maltese temples to Andean citadels. This would make the shared logic a kind of ancient open-source code, a foundational operating system for sacred construction that different cultures use to write their own distinct software. The silent stones do not give us a definitive verdict, but they have given us the question, and in doing so, they have reframed our entire understanding of the ancient world. They suggest a connectedness, whether of ideas or of origin, that our standard history books have only just begun to trace. This shared stone language echoes across every continent, a testament to something far greater than coincidence. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Cambodia, from the high Andes to the plains of Europe, these 30 sites are not random ruins. They are deliberate chapters in a single, global story, a story written in the universal languages of geometry, astronomy, and an unshakable human will. It is a story of ingenuity, of looking at a mountain and seeing not just rock but a canvas for the divine. It is a story of spiritual yearning, a deep desire to build a bridge between our fleeting lives and the eternal cycles of the cosmos, to etch our understanding of the universe into the very bones of the earth. The evidence laid out before us presents a fundamental choice, a fork in the road of our past. Did this shared construction logic come from a common teacher, a lost civilization whose wisdom was carried across the oceans by forgotten explorers? Or does it speak to something innate within us, a universal human capacity that, when faced with the same profound questions about time, stability, and the sacred, inevitably arrives at the same elegant solutions in stone? This mystery does more than puzzle us. It actively challenges the isolationist narrative of history, the old story of cultures developing in lonely bubbles. It suggests whispers of connection across impossible distances, or perhaps a shared starting point so ancient it predates our written records. The silent stones invite us to look at the ancient world not as a collection of separate experiments, but as a tapestry where threads of knowledge, whether traded or independently discovered, weave a picture of startling unity. And so the mystery endures not as a frustration, but as an invitation. It invites us to keep looking with fresh eyes at old ruins, to keep questioning the textbooks, and most of all, to keep marveling at what our ancestors, in all their diverse brilliance, were capable of achieving. Their legacy is not a closed book, but an open question written across the planet, waiting for the next curious mind to read a little deeper. If this journey through time and stone has reshaped your view of the ancient world, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest puzzles. Let us know in the comments below which of these 30 sites, with its unique whisper from the past, resonates most deeply with you.